Hello, everybody. Michael Pierce here. The first one is Bell Bottoms by the John Spencer Blues Explosion. And I associate this with the ESTP. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. So, anyway, a lot of people know this song from Baby Driver. The movie Baby Driver, which is about a getaway driver. It's very stylish. It's by Edgar Wright, I believe, and it's the opening scene. This is like the first thing you hear. There's no dialogue. It's just playing this song, and it shows the titular baby driver, this young getaway driver, rocking out in the car while his compatriots go and rob a bank, and then he provides the getaway while the song is playing. And so it's very difficult to not associate the song with heists and driving really fast and doing crazy things with your vehicle, which is all very stereotypically STP. There's a couple of other reasons that I associate this with the ESTP. One is that there's just something about the fact that you have the orchestra with the rock music, that it sort of has mixed those two things together in this very wild way. And there's something about that mixture of like classy with like raw, harsh rock that I just think is a wonderful encapsulation of the duality of the ESTP. Another song I think I could have used potentially would be Tank by the Seatbelts, if any of you have ever watched Cowboy Bebop. The other thing about the song Bell Bottoms is there's no lyrics except for this guy kind of in the background doing this announcer voice, and then them sort of going bell bottoms, right? But the announcer guy's like, now I've got to tell you about the fabulous, most groovy bell bottoms. He's like hyping up the crowd, right? He's getting everybody excited for this experience that you are now going to go through, the John Spencer Blues Explosion experience, which is just, there's just something about that also reminds me of the ESTP, this presentation. FE and SE, I think, seem to both be related in that they have something to do with presentation, they have something to do with personas, they have to do with having this sensitivity to how you are coming off to other people, I think. That's sort of how I'm starting off with. And the ESTP definitely has that. They can't not think about how they're coming off to other people, which may sound odd because of their, at least in some cases, their wildness or even antisocial behavior, but the thing you have to understand is that it all has this showiness to it in presentation. It's more of like an actor. Like, actors can play villains as well as heroes, but in either case, they're still acting. And that is sort of an aspect, I think, of the ESTP, and in fact, of the Beta Quadra in general. So this song, I think, has this sort of showiness to it. And it's very entertaining. It's wild. It also reminds me of just a very peculiar, particular aesthetic that I remember getting from the few ESTPs who I've been able to know well, which is I actually haven't had the opportunity to meet nearly as many ESTPs as I have some of the other types. I just, maybe I've known them, but I just didn't know whether for sure they were ESTPs. But the ones who I know almost for sure was this family who I think there were just a lot of ESTPs in that family, which was a recipe for chaos in their case. Wonderful family, a lot of kids. The father, I'm pretty sure, was an ESTP, and he was basically like not a mayor, but like a town planner, and so he kind of was in politics, and very energetic, very intelligent, very well read. Wasn't afraid to sort of push your buttons to see what would happen. That's just sort of how he was, and that seems to be how a lot of ESTPs are. That was how his oldest son was sometimes. Very wild, but that was sort of how he presented himself. And then later, as he grew up and had some different experiences and things, he actually became almost ISTP-ish he became, but I knew that was sort of how he was presenting himself, as, oh, now I am grown up, I am mature, I am cowboy man now. Like, he, like, had the whole 9 yards and everything. It was fascinating. Bell bottoms, ESTP. The next one is Trashcan by Delta Spirit, which I associate with the ESFP. So you have the two SE types at the beginning. This song just is sort of a history for me. I've known this song for a long time. It was actually a song my dad found. And I think he heard it in like a McDonald's or something and was asked he liked it so much he asked the manager, like, what song is this? And the manager checked like his iPod or whatever they were. It's by the band Delta Spirit, and I know that the album that it was on was called Ode to Sunshine, and it had this picture of a guy with glasses holding up a glass of like wine or something like that, right? So there's, just all those little associations kind of go into it for me anyway. This song, I just think of sunshine. One of the interesting things about typology is that I've said this before, it provides a language to talk about things that we don't have words for otherwise, but do in fact exist. And that's part of the reason why, what I was about to say it has a naivety to it, but I'm like, that is not the right word. I don't think we have a word for describing this very peculiar aspect of the ESFP, which I do sense, which I want to say naivete, but that's not correct because that implies that they don't know what they're doing, and that's absolutely not true. The ESFP is very conscious, but it's like a chosen naivete. It's like a non-naive naivete, if that makes any sense. They have a dogged optimism, is what I wrote on my little sheet here. And I've actually known a fair number of ESFPs, and they have this happiness even when, I don't want to say happiness even, they have this cheerfulness even when they're in great pain, even when they're like, life sucks. Like, there's still this brightness to them. It doesn't make them at all immune to suffering in life. In some sense, it may very well make them even more vulnerable to it. But it's just the way they come off, it's like they're just a sun and they're just shining. Like, that's just been my experience with ESFPs, male and female. Yeah, it's kind of like sharks. Like, if a shark stops swimming, it'll die. Sometimes I feel like ESFPs kind of feel that way. And that like they have to keep moving, otherwise their heart will stop or something, which I know is not literally true because ESFPs are perfectly capable of relaxing if they want to. But this one does have lyrics, and the lyrics are very much go with why I associate it with ESFP. I'm just going to read some of these off to you. I was found near the train tracks looking so homeless at you. You came like the copper and said, son, it's time to move. So going back into that notion of motion, right, of the ESFP feels like they need to get up and move. So it's like if you stay standing still, you might as well be sitting on train tracks. You're just waiting for the train to come hit you. You got to get up and move. The chorus is, my love is coming, I can barely hardly wait around. Another great line is, this world is way too small to feel like nothing. Which I believe what he's saying is, this world is way too small for you to feel like nothing. So he's trying to cheer you up, as it were. And I think that that's a very ESFP way of thinking, to think that the world is small. To feel, in fact, I think it might be an SENI thing in a certain sense, where you're willing to say, I have encompassed the world with my thought. I have held it in my hand. Right, I see to the kernel and see it as essential, and that is where I'm most comfortable. My heart is thumping. I can feel it more with every beat. I finally found the cure for my own cancer, which is another thing with ESFPs. I think that they will find the solution to their own problems. And like I've mentioned before, the interesting association I see with ESFPs and self-help gurus and stuff like that, where you get SFP types, or at the very least gamma types, to use the socionics term, NTJs and SFPs, trying to give advice on how to gain power over the world, how to have more energy and more business sense and rah, rah. So that is Trashcan. Let me see how long. Okay, 16 minutes and I've done 2 songs. This is going to be a long video. The next one, Mystery Skulls, their song Endlessly, I associated with the ISFJ. I don't know it. Oh, one person guessed ISFJ. BB Block guessed ISFJ. So good job, BB Block. You were the only one who was synced with me. I have no idea why you associated the song with the ISFJ, because I do not blame anybody for thinking this is an SFP song, because it's very peppy, it's very energetic. It makes perfect sense that people would associate it with, say, the SFP. Some people said ENFJ. I have specific reasons for associating it with the ISFJ. Well, actually, this is a better connection. So this song reminds me very much of a video game. You can get it on Steam that is called Hyper Light Drifter, which is a beautiful game, and you play as sort of this blue-skinned alien man in sort of a sci-fi fantasy world, and you can sort of move really fast, and you have this sword and a gun, and it's kind of one of those sorts of things. I don't know why I have that association, but getting more into the lyrics, he's saying the whole song is about loyalty. He's like, I've been holding on. I've been holding on. I'll fight for you endlessly. So it's a song about loyalty, and I almost, whenever I think about this Hyperlight Drifter character that I created in my head, I always imagine them as like a traditional knight trying to rescue this princess character, and cutting through all of these robots and things in order to rescue this princess, who he feels this chivalrous, almost like duty to protect. Maybe they're like the next in line to the throne, this princess, and he's their protector, right? So it's more of this guardianship thing going on. I'll fight for you endlessly. I won't let them take you away from me. The tertiary TI, so this applies to both the ISFJ and the INFJ, but tertiary TI seems to be characterized by the sentiment, I will die on this rock, right? Like, you can pry it from my cold, dead fingers. There's this sort of sudden, bam, I have stuck my flag in the ground and I am not going to move from this spot. I may not be able to affect TE change, but what I can do is prevent change to me via TI. So that sort of tertiary TI has that sort of naive juvenile strength where it's like, I shut down all negotiation, I am doing this. You see that, I think, a lot with SFJs and NFJs. With the SFJ, I think it usually has more to do with a form of loyalty to people or to things. And so that is why I associate the song with that. The next song is Hurt by Johnny Cash, the Man in Black. And I associate this with the ISTJ. I was actually surprised by the number of people who guessed ISTJ. I mean, I was correct in guessing that a lot of people would think INFP or ISFP. That is completely understandable. In fact, I think, yeah, almost everybody guessed FI types, and then there were 4 people who guessed ISTJ and 1 person who guessed ESFJ. So that's like a perfect example of, okay, everybody associates this with like introverted feeling. Almost everybody associates it with that, whether it is tertiary or dominant. If we were to have objective typings for songs, which obviously I don't think you can, but if we were to have that, this would probably be an ISFP song, simply because the writer, the guy for 9 Inch Nails, is probably an ISFP, and Johnny Cash, I am convinced, is also an ISFP. So you have a song written and performed originally by an ISFP, by an emo ISFP, and it is later chosen and covered even better, arguably, by a cowboy ISFP. So you have ISFPs from 2 very different sort of backgrounds but they are equally ISFP, and they both love this song. The song is ISFP. However, I have associated it with the ISTJ. Why? Well, and I think it's because it's all about the past. It's very somber. It has this pessimism to it. It's self-upbraiding. It's regretful. It's obviously, again, these are not meant to be theme songs of the types because some of them are happier than others. But the STJ types, and particularly the ISTJ, just seem very often to have this. Again, words sort of fail me. The closest we have is pessimism, but it's like an optimistic pessimism, but not even quite that. It's this sense of, well, the lyrics themselves, particularly in the second half of the song, everyone I know goes away in the end. My empire of dirt, right? You could have it all. My empire of dirt. Very sarcastic. I will let you down. Beneath the stains of time, the feelings disappear. You are someone else. I am still right here. So you have this sense of everything crumbles with time. Time, with a capital T, is this powerful force that marches through, and things will naturally deteriorate unless they are upkept by human beings. But there's sort of the assumption that they won't be, because people are stupid or whatever. They can't be relied on because they're human beings. And this extends to the STJ themselves. They will feel, whether they admit it or not, that they don't measure up, because, by what measure ye meet, ye shall be measured again also. Seems to be a universal psychological principle. Also, it's just a beautiful song, and it wasn't a strategic pick. This song really did just leap out to me as this is the ISTJ. This will be the ISTJ song. And then you have the very end of the song, by the way, which says, if I could start again a million miles away, I would keep myself. I would find a way. So keep myself, you have that sort of SI trying to avoid neglect, but also the end of the song, it's very poignant that it ends with thinking of the possibilities which ultimately cannot be. What are the NE possibilities of how things could have gone? That is I associate that song with the ISTJ. Very poignant, very beautiful. All right, next song. Riders on the Storm by The Doors. Good old Jim Morrison. This is the song that I associate with the ISFP. There are like 3 people who guessed ISTJ, a couple people guessed ISTP, so I guess that's maybe where the cluster is. But for the most part, it was all over the place. So why do I associate it with the ISFP? I chose Riders on the Storm precisely because it doesn't come off as Pixies and Fairy Dust, which I think a lot of people tend to associate with the ISFP. They think of them as cute, squishy muffins, I think Johnny Cash is actually a better image of what the ISFP is really like. Johnny Cash in all his glory and infamy. Yeah, the ISFP is not a cute little muffin top. The ISFP, if you wanted an image, I would choose like a deer in the woods on the side of the road. And I choose that image for both flattering and unflattering reasons. Flattering because deer are mysterious and they're beautiful, and they're also dangerous, if you're not careful near them. They won't take nonsense from you. There is a vulnerability there in that they are hunted. They're not necessarily meat eaters, so you kind of have all that mixed in. And then also, I'm very terribly sorry, but deers are also jerks. And sometimes, and this is important because ISFPs are not children, they're human beings, and human beings can all be jerks, and the ISFP can have its special way of being a jerk, which is just something I have experienced. And I hope you don't take too much offense at that. Obviously, I'm trying to be humorous about it. That they'll leap into the street and hit your car, and you'll be like, why did you do that? And it's like, because I felt like it was right. It's like, I hate you. and I hit you with my car. You're going to get yourself killed. That sort of thing. But anyway, all my joking aside, I need to actually talk about Riders on the Storm. Sorry. I chose Riders on the Storm because it conveys better that mysterious feel. It doesn't feel patronizing to me. It's so moody, it's calming, it's unassuming, it has this mystery to it. It begins in nature and then it ends in nature. It begins with the sounds of the storm and it ends with the sounds of the storm. It sort of fades in and then fades out. And it has this sense of, people, these mysterious ghost people almost traveling on the road. You don't exactly know what the song is talking about. And so it kind of has this tertiary NI feel, I feel like. If I had to represent the song pictorially, it would be like a Japanese painting, right? It would be a Japanese painting of a mountain peak or like rain falling on a field or something. And the lyrics to the song would just be this little haiku up in the corner. And then most of it is just dedicated to the atmosphere of the music or of the picture. Because a good portion of the song is really just dedicated to the keyboard solo and the guitar and all that stuff. No singing or anything, and I think that's an important thing about the ISFP is it's like no words, just sing, just let the unconscious come to you. Next song, Dog Days Are Over by Florence and the Machine. A lot of people guessed ENFP for this one. I associate it with the INFP. Dog Days Are Over, INFP. However, as I've thought more about it, I've become somewhat conflicted, actually. Because a lot of people guessed ENFP. I'm guessing that's because energetic song, very happy song, and the lyrics themselves can sort of easily be associated with an ENFP. It's run fast for your mother, fast for your father. You've got to leave behind the weights that are holding you down. However, I associate this with the INFP. How do I say this? Well, first of all, the first line is happiness, it hurt like a train on a track. Or then later it says happiness hurt like a bullet in the back. That association of happiness with pain is an FI thing. Because I don't think FE types really get that. I certainly don't. At least not when I first listened to the song. As I've explored typology more, I've started to get it more, but it is not natural to me. It's like, no, happiness is objectively good, and then sadness is objectively bad, and that's why we use those terms. But the INFP is like, no, there's so much more going on here. Which I suppose you could associate with the ENFP too, but I associate it more with dominant FI. Also, I think I'm swayed by the fact that I believe Florence Welch is an INFP. I know some people think she's ENFP. Fair enough. I think she's INFP. Yeah, I'll just be real with you. This song is like borderline sacred to me. I don't know why. There is something about this song and a number of Florence Welch's other songs. Jung would probably say that there is some anima association going on here. In fact, I considered not putting this song on the list and choosing a different song for the INFP precisely because I feel like my just liking of the song has such a personal nature to it that I didn't think it was... I don't know, there's just something that felt like, well, but is this really the INFP or is this just my version of the INFP? That probably doesn't make sense, but in any case, the lyrics, very eclectic. It's sort of like a menagerie of images, and they're all trying to triangulate a feeling. So she kind of uses these very different, weird, not very harmoniously connected images, but they're connected by the fact that they're all pointing towards one thing which Florence Welch is trying to say. And that's like the method of FINE. NI would really want all of the images to flow into each other and sort of have the same theme. I've often been annoyed by NFP songs or INFP songs because there's a lot of INFP musicians, and I've often felt like the imagery does not fit together. It's like you're just picking and choosing images because you think they look pretty, you're not sewing them together. But in this song especially, it works because... Oh, one more thing that's worth noting, which might have contributed to INFP in my head, is I misunderstood what the term dog days means. When I first listened to the song, I thought that dog days referred to like dogs fighting over food, right? Like wartime or something. I thought it referred to like TE competition, like inferior TE competition. So by singing "The Dog Days Are Over," it's the INFP celebrating that, oh, we don't have to deal with TE for a while anymore. We can be just FI. That isn't what dog days means, though. Dog days means the heat of summer when no one wants to do anything. So totally different connotation, and sort of further moves into it being an ENFP-ish song because of the movement and wanting to move. So the next song, "This Too Shall Pass" by OK Go. The marching band music video, one of my favorite music videos ever, also one of my favorite songs ever. I associate it with the ESFJ. Yeah, this song actually is also like borderline sacred to me. It's just been... The song itself is all about cheering somebody up, which is very ESFJ to me. The lyrics of it, in some sense, border on being platitudinal, and yet they have this tremendous depth, if only because of the pathos with which it is sung and the genuineness with which it is sung, so that you realize, oh, the only reason I think it's platitudinal is because I'm a snobby NI type, and I just think that things have, in order for things to be profound, they have to be hard to understand or something like this, right? It's like, no, things can be common property or well known by the culture. They can be part of the everyday, the everydayness of a culture and still be remarkably profound. And that's, I think, one of the mistakes that NI types make in regards to both the ESFJ and the ESTJ, is they think that these types are shallow or stupid or whatever because they think that the insights that they treasure the most are just so obvious. But just because they're, quote, obvious doesn't mean, one, that anybody actually believes them, which is one problem, and two, it also doesn't mean that they're not deep and profound. It just means they've already been assimilated by the culture, which NI, kind of like FI, is trying to get away from. I don't know, it's all about this. First of all, it's very quirky, which captures, I think, the tertiary NE. It has this, who would think this up to do a music video where we're a big old marching band playing our song, and you have people like in ghillie suits in the bushes, and like all these kids doing, it's like this marching band for a football game or something, right? Which it's very traditional cooperation, it's cooperation through all these different types of people all working to sing this song. There's cute kids running around with streamers, and I don't know, there's just something about the kind of sense of community that is generated there, and the fact that they had to organize all this, do it all in one take, the creativity of it, while it's also being more focused on I don't know, it's just very ESFJ to me. It kind of crosses over to the point of being like, it's just self-evident that it's ESFJ. And I believe that John Barnes agrees with me that this is like totally the SFJ song. Okay, next song. We are halfway through, everybody. Halfway through. The next song is Colossal by Wolfmother. And this song... no one is going to... This is part of three... This is the first of three songs that nobody guessed what I associated them with. And it's funny, too, because people had strong opinions on what these songs are supposed to be that do not match up with my own. And beginning with Colossal, a lot of people, quite understandably, believed it was an ENTJ song or an ENTP song. Actually, the guesses were all over the place, but a lot of people guessed it was a dominant TE type. I, however, associated it with the ENFJ. So let me explain myself. The lyrics, nothing to do with it, really. I mean, I've listened to the lyrics, I've tried to make them fit the ENFJ. I feel like there are very subtle things, but it's not... The lyrics do not make it an ENFJ song for me. It's more the tone of it and the specific associations this gives me. For one, I think that ENFJs are a lot more edgy than they're usually given credit for, if that makes sense. They have a sort of harshness and an edge to them that is reminiscent of the ENTJ, but is in some sense even more harsh because they're very conscious of it. Again, like the ESTP, the ENFJ is very They're very focused on presentation. They think in terms of how am I coming off to people, because that's just how they think through SEFE. It's the same for INFJs and even for ISTPs, and I'll hopefully make a video about that at some point. But the fact that the song, in my opinion, is very showy, it reminds me of like heavy metal album covers, but like specifically fantasy, like sci-fi fantasy, like Edgar Rice Burroughs, Frank Frazetta. If you know what I'm talking about, you know this aesthetic, like 80s, like the 80s fantasy. There's a very peculiar aesthetic. Like if you look at the cover for the Wolf Mother album that this comes from, that Colossal comes from, it's a Frank Frazetta painting of the Sea Witch. And that just kind of encapsulates a lot of this aesthetic, which for some reason, just when listening to this song, I'm like, this reminds me of the ENFJ friends I have. I think because the song has such pathos to it, it's that tertiary SE, I think. I think the ENFJ, it's almost like a song of how the ENFJ would like to be seen in certain contexts. They would like to be like this rock god or something. I don't know how much of this is making sense. This is a particularly subjective pick for me, but yeah, I associate it with ENFJ, kind of breaking stereotypes there, I suppose. I don't know if there's anything else I really had explicitly to say other than just trying to convey that aesthetic. So the next song is Hard Sun by Eddie Vedder, and this is the ENTJ song, in my opinion. A lot of people guessed SFJ, which is very interesting. I don't think, nobody guessed ENTJ for this one, which I think is understandable. I associate it with the ENTJ because, one, the voice is like the most masculine voice I've ever heard. It is just like, it's this gravelly, sort of deep, husky thing going on where he's like, ah. My reason for that is I do feel like the ENTJ, regardless of whether they're men or women, archetypally speaking, it's a very masculine type. Again, archetypally speaking. And if this makes any sense, like, because I've met several women ENTJs in my time, and there is no contradiction between them being biological women, with them being mothers, with them having their feminine side. There's no contradiction between that and the fact that personality-wise, they are archetypally masculine. It just, in fact, in some sense, we have like the notion of like the iron, the iron mother, right, or the woman of steel or whatever. Like I think we kind of have the Amazon archetype, which makes it so that that doesn't feel contradictory to us. I think we have all met sort of the big, bulky, strong-willed mother type, if anybody knows what I'm trying to say there. And that is what I associate there. So anyway, it has this expansiveness. I just think of somebody like on a mountaintop, like looking out over everything, or like I just think of like a Minecraft god, right? Like a Minecraft character, but like building their house on the top of a mountain and like sort of alone, and they're creating their world from the elements and the materials, and they're going to create a city here or something. It's very NTJ to me. But the song's lyrics themselves are, in my opinion, about an ENTJ singing to his ISFP anima, to his sort of feminine side. He's talking about this sort of ghost woman, or this nature woman who he is associated with. One of the last things that happens in the song is that he fears that he has lost his anima through his neglect, which is a very inferior FI thing, I think. Inferior FI, they get so focused on their projects, on their TE, that they lose track of what is right beneath their feet and what they're stepping on. And I think that is a part of the song. But just that expansiveness and that sort of breath of cold, fresh air. Because when I meet with ENTJs, as far as they themselves are concerned about themselves, I don't think they think of, say, like the Colossal song. They just think, well, this is just how I am. They don't think of themselves as having this edge, even though they do. They're just sort of being themselves, I think. Oddly enough, I've had rather good relations with ENTJs in the past. I haven't felt overly uncomfortable with them. Next song is Wake Up by Arcade Fire. This song, the community seems to, with one resounding voice, say that this is the ENFJ song. It's either an ENFJ song, or it's an ESFJ song, or it's an INFJ song, but almost everybody guessed ENFJ. However, I have chosen for this song the ESTJ. I had no idea why I decided to make this the ESTJ song when I first picked it. I just remember because ESTJ was one of the last types that I was adding to the list. I was like, what is an ESTJ song? I didn't want a song that was just going to be stereotypical. We'll get to Big Iron in a moment, because that's the one exception. But I have justification for that one. When I just remember listening to this and being like, this will be the ESTJ song. And I was like, you know what, I'll just run with that intuition. And as I've studied the lyrics, I'm like, yeah, this is actually very ESTJ. It's the very human side of the ESTJ, in my opinion. Now that I'm older, my heart colder, and I can see that it's a lie. The song is very sad, and it's about growing up, and they've become cold. And I think, first of all, the notion of growing up seems to occur a lot in the Delta Quadra. I feel like a lot of NFPs and STJs think a lot about childhood and their own childhood and just childhood as a concept. I just see that at least a lot in, Freud, Rousseau, Augustine, Bill Watterson. If the children don't grow up, and it has this very interesting image where it says if the children don't grow up, then they'll sort of fester. If they don't mature, and it talks about how most people aren't actually grown up. They're just children in adults' bodies, and they have this infantile rage, right? And if we don't, figure something out about this, they'll just become this storm cloud. And it's a very interesting image where it says, and then they'll rain on everything, and then everything will turn to rust, which is interesting because what it means is it is death by neglect, because things are not cleaned off from the water. The water is just allowed to sit on them. So it's almost like these children who grow up physically but not emotionally then become this infantile lightning cloud that goes and destroys everything because nobody will stand up to it and try to protect anything from its neglect. It's a very interesting image, in my opinion. That's how I interpret it anyway. And then the final line I think is especially important, but it's only important insofar as I misheard it. And I still think what they're actually saying is, with my lightning bolts a-glowing, I can't see where I'm going. The official lyrics, as far as I can tell, don't say can't, they say can. I say can't, and I insist on this, because the idea in my head is the lightning bolts are not being used as a flashlight, but rather the lightning bolts are so bright and it's nighttime that it shines in your eyes and you therefore can't see where you're going. The fire, the justice of the TE that wants to accomplish this or that the ESTJ is acknowledging that they have been blinded by this and they can't see where they are going. So it's kind of this irony that they want to accomplish things in the external world, but they're recognizing that they have a certain blindness when they do so because of the brightness of their certainty of the TE flame. Next one, David Bowie, Space Oddity, INTP. One, because it's about astronauts, and astronauts just make me think of INTPs, because INTPs are scientists. Now, the reason astronauts, though, remind me of INTPs, I think, and seem to remind a lot of people of INTPs, is because of sort of the cold abstractness of space, right? You go into outer space, and there's nothing there. And it sort of provides this pure environment that you don't get in the everyday on the earth, but you do get out there, and allows you to kind of touch the purity of space-time, right? If you want to be almost mystical about it. I think people kind of associate the deadly pureness of TI, taken just straight. They associate that with the cold depths of space. Sort of this beautiful moment of the INTP actually succeeding beyond their wildest dreams and impressing everybody, and then he's up there, and then he sort of drifts off because he's going to explore, go where no man has gone before, in the realm of the mind, if you will, and is now going to drift away and leave everybody behind. So it's very sad. That could apply in certain sense to the ISFP, but I just associate this song with my dad. Not even really for the lyrics, just for the feel of it. It just is. I think John Barnes, in his guessing, just said, this is objectively the INTP song, which I laughed out loud at, because I'm like, yes, it is. I can't explain why, but it just is. It just feels like an INTP song. It feels like this compliment to their character and their ingenuity or whatever. It feels a very flattering choice for them, in my opinion. So I don't know if I have anything else to say about it other than that. Next one, well, it is Big Iron by some guy, Marty Robbins. I don't know, he's some older singer, classy singer, classy guy. Big Iron, ISTP. Now let me explain. I mean, there's not a whole lot to explain. Most people guessed, okay, this is an ST song. One person guessed ESFJ, points for ingenuity. One person guessed ENTJ, points for ingenuity. You're wrong. It's an ISTP song. Okay, this is very stereotypical because it is a gunslinger song. It's about Ranger comes to town. He doesn't talk to anybody because he's too cool for school. And then you got the outlaw who's also too cool for school, and they meet, and then one of them is faster than the other and kills him, and that's the end of the story. And it's like, okay, yes, I know it's Gunslinger's story, but my reason for associating this with the ISTP is the ISTP is very forthright. I don't think ISTPs would necessarily care that I've associated the song with them. The fact that there's not that much depth to it, I don't think is a problem, just because this seems to be a TI thing in general, actually. The song is so forthright, it almost borders on parody for us, right? Because it's we all know exactly what's going to happen. It's just so obvious. But it's also it's archetypal, it's classy, it's classic, However, I think the song would become absolutely almost the ISTP theme song, I would almost be willing to say, if the final lyrics were changed, the final stanzas, in order to make it so that rather than it just being this sort of regular duel, and the reason that the ranger wins the battle is by shooting faster than the other guy, I would change it so that the reason the ranger wins is that the ranger just straight up cheats, and rather than walking the full distance, yeah, I would change the lyrics so that the ranger whirls around when he's only walked 3 steps and just blows Texas Red away, just unloads all 6 bullets from his gun into his back to make absolutely sure he's dead. And the song would just sort of end with, there's just something about that imagery. He doesn't even really win because he's faster, he just wins because he doesn't care about the rules. He's you're Texas Red and you've killed 20 people or however many people. You're stupid enough to agree to this, so I'll just change the rules on you. Which I think is almost the true way that what the STP, their modus operandi is. It's not even necessarily that they're faster, it's just that they control the rules of the game. They choose what the rules are going to be, and they flip the script on people. So anyway, Big Iron, ISTP. Alright, Talking Heads, Psycho Killer. I associate this song with the ENFP. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, the ENFP. Most people guessed ENTP or ISTP. Very understandable. The reason I associate this with the ENFP, though, is a couple of reasons. One, it's a very quirky sounding song, but also because he, for no apparent reason, just breaks into different languages throughout the song. He like mixes French in there and some other stuff. And that is something that I associate very much with ENFPs. ENFPs, all of the ENFPs I've known seem to have an interest and fascination with language, with like different languages. It doesn't mean they're a polyglot, it just means they seem to be fascinated by the possibilities opened up by having new language systems for saying things. Right? I think it's sort of that NEFI. They have one more tool for trying to triangulate the feeling, but they're not just interested in triangulating the feeling. In some sense, they're more interested in just exploring the rings around the feeling themselves. So there's that aspect of it. The song is rather dark when you listen to the lyrics, and so I associate it with the dark side of the ENFP, with sort of an ENFP who is having a very difficult time, which I've also seen a fair bit of. ENFPs, I think their brains can work too fast, and it can drive them nuts. They don't seem to have the same kind of dogged optimism as the ESFP. They seem to mix in more of the ISTJ cynicism. Darker in that regard. They're more cynical in that regard often. In my experience, they will sort of get burned by the world, and they'll always remember that and kind of be frustrated because they want things to be prettier and more beautiful in some sense how they should be, but all they get is how things actually are, and that's very frustrating. So anyway, you kind of have this sense of the manic ENFP in the song where he's like, I'm tense and nervous and I can't relax. Don't touch me, I'm a real live wire, which is a great line. But also, I can't seem to face up to the facts. I can't seem to face up to the facts. Yeah, I'm tense and nervous and I can't relax. And then you have the line where he's like, I passed out hours ago, I'm sadder than you'll ever know, which that there might be sort of the little key secret for why I'm associating this with the ENFP, because I have seen the sadness in the ENFP that is in many respects not noticed by a lot of people because of their peppy attitude. But there's a lot of grief in there, almost like just grief for the nature of reality or something like that they may not even realize themselves. It's interesting, more than interesting, you know. All right, the next song, Where Is My Mind by the Pixies. This song I associate with the ENTP. First of all, Fight Club, which I believe Chuck Powell, whatever his name is an ENTP, and that movie has kind of this ENTP weirdness to it, you could say. You can argue back and forth. It seems like kind of an INFJ ENTP movie with David Fincher and Chuck Powell. I don't know how you pronounce it. I can't even spell it. But anyway, it's the song, if you haven't seen that film, which is understandable, but it's the song that plays at the end of the film, really hits that drum beat right when these buildings are blowing up in front of them. It's an amazing moment. It's just so crazy. The song itself is very sad, very lonely, and very crazy. It's weird. It has this sense where it's like the singer feels like they're being sarcastic in order to mask how genuinely upset they are. Like they're having this wry, self-depreciating sense of humor and trying to not take themselves seriously as a defense against the fact that if they do take it seriously, they might just snap. And so again, this is also kind of a dark side of the ENTP for me. But it's also a beautiful song in a way, just the oh in the background. Also the title of it and the lyrics where he's just asking, where is my mind? You know, with your feet in the air and your head on the ground. Try this trick, spin it. I believe it's like your head will collapse and there's nothing in it. And you'll ask yourself, where is my mind? I think ENTPs often And ENFPs in their own way suffer from, they don't know where their center is. They don't feel like they have a core in the way that, I do. I have a very strong notion of like my Cartesian ego center, but then you get Hume, who's like, well, I look at my ego center and I see nothing but NE butterflies fluttering around, and there's no actual center, which is just something I still struggle to relate to or understand. The ENTP will argue themselves out of existence if they found a way to. They're just, nothing is off limits for their argument, for their looking for the truth. So even if they go insane trying to do it. So just kind of the mixture of the sadness and loneliness also that I've felt with a lot of ENTPs. Penultimate song is MGMT's Little Dark Age. This song, a lot of people associated with the INTJ or the INTP, in fact overwhelmingly so. I, however, associate it with the INFJ. It has this remarkable way, particularly in the chorus, of feeling at one and the same time very hopeful and also very anxious and unsettled, which is the INFJ on a bad day. You get the sense from the song that you're hearing somebody giving a prophecy, like a weird Delphic prophecy that is hard to interpret and is couched in these weird images and that seem very profound, but also like they might just be kind of weird gobbledygook, which I think is very NI. There's this visionary aspect. There's also this flat affect to the song because they don't vary their voices very much when singing it. It's just da-da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da-da. It's like just flat. It's just the same thing. And you get the sense that you're conversing with somebody who at one and the same time is very concerned about what they're talking about, but is also highly objective because they have to be objective in order to see it. They can't afford to get scared, and so therefore they've kind of developed this flat affect, and I think that is a more common trait of INFJs than is often recognized, particularly when the INFJ doesn't know the person. I think they can become very inexpressive. They don't show much emotion at first because I think they're trying to tap into the TI and they're trying to sort of put on a front so that nobody can get to their vulnerability. But yeah, the song, when you listen to it, I don't know, it just has this sense of like compassion for people in the future, and it's trying to give advice for people in the future as this like presumed collapse of civilization or of something is sort of oncoming. They're trying to prepare people for it. So it has this visionary quality to it, and it also has this mystery. You almost feel like it's pretentious because of how like weird the imagery is. You're like, what is this? What are you talking about? Why don't you just come out and say it? But it seems like this is just the natural mode for this INFJ to express themselves. So that's Little Dark Age. And finally, the final song is Kashmir by Led Zeppelin. I associate this song with the INTJ. And that is because it has this, kind of like with the ENTJ, it has this epic feel to it. I just imagine in my mind this sci-fi fantasy traveler with like goggles and like all wrapped up for the desert, walking through like the Sahara, and is like on like a weird alien camel or something, and is trying to find Shangri-La or whatever, and he's talking about all this stuff. Some of the lines are very, and I think, I am a traveler of both time and space to be where I have been. He sees these elders and he goes to talk with them, and they talk of days for which they sit and wait, and all will be revealed. Sounds caress my ear, but not a word can I relate. So you got that kind of NI struggling to translate their visions into words. But also just, I don't know, it's just sort of the expansiveness of the music, the fact that it has this epic tone, that it's kind of has this loneliness of the desert to it, of the INTJ sort of being on their own, on this journey through the desert to discover a new land or discover a secret or something or conquer a new land. I get sort of some of the same sort of heavy metal sci-fi fantasy feels that I get from a few of the other songs like Colossal. So yeah, I don't, for this one it's particularly intuitive for me, but those are sort of the associations I make. I just imagine this guy trekking across this landscape and sort of singing this song to himself. Somebody who's like a a wizard alchemist or something who's traveling from one place to another. So yeah, those are the 16 songs. Those are my reasons for associating the songs with those types. Thank you for your guesses. Thank you for your patience and for all your support and all that good stuff. I hope you enjoyed, and let me know what you think of my descriptions, and I will see you in the next video.